It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
I've been saying it. This week was just way too short. Just like that, and the week is over. Welcome to it. This is ZiFM Sport on a Friday, Fire Friday, the lockdown edition. From our homes to the comfort of your homes, you will hear from Barry Manandi, Mike Madoda, Mark Paz, Chris, and Alois Bunjira. My name is Sean Tafrenyika. I'm the producer for ZiFM Sport. I hope you're staying at home and keeping safe. Jam-packed show for you, fitting for Friday. Is the type of show that will kick off your weekend on a good note. Tonight we're talking about the greatest comebacks in Champions League history. So the question is, what is your greatest Champions League comeback and why? Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. The handle is at ZiFM Sport. I'll be sure to read some of your messages a little later on. The Jam-Packed Show also includes updates from a beautiful game, around the world in 60, our power play, and a local sports news roundup. Let's kick it off there in our local sports news roundup with Mike.
The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis.
Right, let's get you up to speed with what's happening on the home front. Some local sports news updates for you, starting with squash, where players selected to represent Zimbabwe at the international squash tournaments have been given fitness programs to follow during the COVID-19 lockdown to prepare for future competitions. A number of major competitions have been put on ice due to the coronavirus pandemic, which has hit the entire globe. Events cancelled by the World Squash Federation that were scheduled for April are the Texas Open set for Houston in America, Pakistan's Chief of Air Staff International, Oceania Junior Championships in Australia, Irish Open, and Egypt's Al Gouna Open. In news of a sports administrative nature, Zimbabwean participants in the Female Sport Leaders Mobility Exchange program run by the African Union Sports Council Region 5 have been affected by the coronavirus outbreak. The program is held in collaboration with the Association for International Sport for All and funded by the European Union. Under the program, 10 carefully selected young women who are participants in the Region 5 Women Leadership Program were meant to be starting a 2-year exchange program. And we wrap it up with news out of the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League, where Highlanders have urged local Premiership clubs, including rivals Dynamos and Caps United, to set aside their on-field rivalry and unite in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic, threatening their very existence. All sporting activities have been put on hold, with the Premiership season, which was supposed to kick off last month, postponed by at least 2 months. Players have been forced to train on their own at their homes as the country is on a 21-day lockdown. And Boso, the oldest football club in the country, have taken a leading role spearheading awareness campaigns on the pandemic. They have since launched a crowdfunding initiative to raise funds for one of Bulawayo's coronavirus isolation centers, Ekusileni Hospital.
Hi, I'm Vario's coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Now, over the years, we've witnessed some of the greatest comebacks in Champions League history. Those times when it seems all hope is lost, but then magic happens. The tide shifts. The momentum starts flowing in the opposite direction. It is then that we are drawn to the magic of sport, that all things are possible. It ties us together against all odds, believing, fighting, and overcoming the odds. The essence of what I've said has been captured in various ways. First, with Alois, who's got the 1999 Champions League final between Bayern Munich and Manchester United, and then Mike with the 2004 Champions League quarterfinal tie between Deportivo La Coruna and AC Milan.
Yeah, talking of the greatest comebacks in European Champions League football, there are a lot of matches that I can actually think of, great matches, outstanding matches and all that. But the one that actually comes to my mind is the greatest. It should be the Manchester United versus Bayern Munich 1999 Champions League final. Not that because I am a Manchester United fan, but that match was just something else. I remember I was in South Africa. I was playing for Bidvest at that time, and we were watching Morgan Katazo and Becky Temanjov. They were playing for Jomo Cosmos, and they were staying at the same flat as Charles Johan. I was staying on my own flat, but then they came. We organized that we had drinks at my flat, and they came over. We came over and we were watching as a group of Zimbabweans in Braamfontein, Johannesburg at that time, and they were like, Charles is a Liverpool fan, and obviously he was non-aligned, he was neutral, but the rest of us, we were Manchester United fans, and the match was just electrifying, and Bayern Munich were leading. We're leading by 1-0, towards the end, actually in injury time, and we had actually resigned. That Manchester United had lost that match, and I remember Morgan Katazo was actually watching the match from the door. He was like tired and angry and disappointed. He was at the door about to leave because we were just looking at the referee for him to blow the final whistle, and we were all dejected. But you know what? It was just something else. Ryan Giggs took a shot right there in injury time, and Teddy Sheringham equalized, and it was 1-1, and we were like, now we've got a game on our hands, so we can actually go out to extra time. Now Morgan Katazo came back. He came back to sit down because we're now expecting extra time. So Bayern Munich restarted from the center. Manchester United got the ball on the way to the attack, and there was a corner, and we could actually see, sometimes you actually see the agents, you can actually see the spirit in the team. I actually thought that Manchester United did that spirit. They still believed, with seconds to go, I think they still believe that they can still win this. Sometimes when it's 1-1, you've equalized in injury time, you actually relax, hoping for extra time and waiting for the match to finish so that you can actually continue, get a rest a little bit. But the spirit in the Manchester United team, I'd never seen such. They actually were running around in those last few seconds. David Beckham, we could actually see him with the number 7 going to take the corner kick. He just put the ball there. He didn't want to waste time because they knew that at any given time the referee was going to blow the whistle for the fire for the end of the match. But he ran. He just put the ball on the corner spot, took the corner, and there was Teddy Sheringham going to the near post. The flick, and who was at the far post to finish the ball into the roof of the net? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, our current coach right now. And we just went wild. The whole house. I remember I jumped up off the couch. I went onto the walls. I started beating the walls up, and it was incredible. We never expected that Manchester United would win, and that was the last kick of the match, and the match was over right there. That comeback, that in injury time. I can only equate this to Zimbabwe versus Congo in the All Africa Games in 1995, but that's not what we are talking about. We're talking about the Champions League here. I think that was the greatest comeback that I can ever think of. I think the toast to that was because it was in my favor as well, but oh my God, I'd never seen such. The stadium went wild, and the Bayern Munich players, they knew that it was over. You could actually see the dejected players sitting, and Lothar Matthäus just went onto the turf. He was on the bench. He had just been substituted, sitting on the bench with his shin pads off. And then the west side was Kufo. Kufo was so badly affected by the defeat. Before the referee even blew for the final whistle, he was crying. Like tears, like real tears. You could actually feel that this game is over. They'd lost it. They had it. I think that's what happened with Bayern Munich. They thought that they had it in the bag, but all of a sudden it was Manchester United's trophy. It was something else. 1999 was an incredible year for Manchester United. They went on to clinch the treble, but that match will forever be remembered, and I think even Samuel Kufo remembers this match as one of his worst matches of all time, because they had it, but in the last minute they conceded 2 goals, and that was it. They lost the final 2-1, and Manchester United were European champions. It was incredible. I'll never forget that match.
Z.
Hi, I'm Clemens Matau, chicken in midfielder. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
What would Cup football be without a comeback? The thrills, the drama, the excitement, that is the hallmark of Cup competitions, and it's encapsulated in the UEFA Champions League, where we have seen a number of comebacks, but very few of them can be labeled great, and Deportivo La Coruña is certainly one of the sides that was able to institute one of the greatest comebacks in Champions League history. A lot of the modern fans might not be familiar with the name Deportivo La Coruña, but in the 90s and at the turn of the century, they were the third force in Spanish football behind Real Madrid and Barcelona. Yes, Valencia was starting to flex its muscles under a very young Rafael Benitez, who was able to lead them to 2 league titles in the space of 3 years. But Deportivo La Coruña was the side that pushed Real Madrid and Barcelona in terms of achievement and certainly in terms of talent. But 16 years ago, the precise date, the 7th of April 2004, they had their work cut out. The side that was coached by Yabo Irureta, they were 4-1 down going into their second leg of their Champions League quarterfinal with AC Milan, needing something big at the Estadio Municipal de Riazor to progress. The Deportivo squad knew that Walter Pandiani's away goal at the San Siro was a lifeline, and it somehow made them believe that they could actually achieve something special in front of their own fans. But their work was cut out against a very good AC Milan side. The Rossoneri were the best in Europe and featured the stellar talents of Shevchenko, Paolo Maldini, Alessandro Nesta, the Brazilians Cafu, Dida and Kaká, the creative talents of a young Andrea Pirlo, the Portuguese maestro Rui Costa, and the Dutch great Clarence Seedorf, a serial winner in this competition. Now, this game was supposed to be over, or so we thought. Deportivo were undaunted by the task before them, and they embraced the task before them. Now, a smart shot from the centre forward Walter Pandiani, who had scored at the San Siro, a header from Juan Carlos Valeron. I always love that name, Juan Carlos Valeron, just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And a fierce drive from Albert Luque, who later played for Newcastle. A minute from half-time allowed Javier Irureta's team to wipe out Milan's first leg advantage and leave them on course to progress on the away goal. But you know, football is also more than just dramas and thrills. It's also about romance. Now, a substitute is made in the second half, and it's the club captain, okay? He's now a fringe player. He's a club captain, a long-time servant. He's been there through the ups and downs. He comes on, and what does he do? He volleys in a fourth goal with 14 minutes remaining, and it gave Deportivo La Coruña an astonishing 5-4 aggregate win, and it took them into the tournament semi-finals for the first time. Now, you might be thinking, okay, it's just like any other comeback, but it's not, because this was the first time a team had ever recovered from a 3-goal first leg deficit to win in the 12-year history of the Champions League. It was the first time it was done, and it was all the more impressive as it came against a Milan side who had not conceded a European away goal that season. AC Milan, coming into that quarterfinal game, had not conceded a single goal away from home heading into that match against Deportivo La Coruña, and they conceded 4. This was a great defense, guys. We're talking about Cafu, arguably the greatest right back the game has ever seen. Maldini, arguably the greatest left back the game has ever seen, and centre back at the time. The likes of Costa Curta, the likes of Alessandro Nesta, a wonderful, wonderful defender. They had 4 put past them. And if you take a look at that Deportivo La Coruña lineup, Molina, Manuel Pablo, Romero, Neibet, Andrade, Mauro Silva, Sergio, Duché, Victor, Luque, Fran, Juan Carlos Valeron, Jaumina, and Walter Pandiani. Those names will forever be etched in history in the UEFA Champions League. Those names will forever live in Deportivo La Coruña folklore.
Those two matches were absolute classics. Talk about comebacks. I mean, Manchester United legend Peter Schmeichel says he has never been so nervous in his life than that time in the 1999 Champions League final. The incredible match remains forever etched into the memory of football fans far and wide. And you heard it in the voice of our very own Alois as he reveled and drank in that moment. You know, describing the winning mentality, Schmeichel added that you have to gamble and throw caution to the wind in order to win and achieve big things. And that's what they did when they beat Bayern Munich. And talk about that other match, the Deportivo La Coruña match. I mean, such was the scale of victory and domination in the first leg that the fans left the stadium contemplating that they are out of the competition. But then when they were in Spain, they did the unthinkable. I mean, fans had gathered more, with trepidation, and they didn't have any expectation at all. But Deportivo got it done. An absolute fantastic match. And like Mike said, Milan had not conceded an away goal. So think about that momentous feat. Amazing. Now keep your messages coming through. The handle is at ZiFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. What is your greatest comeback in Champions League history and why? I see your tweets coming through. I'll get to them soon. Remember, we've got our power play updates from the beautiful game. But coming up next is Around the World in 60 with Chris. It's the latest in international sports.
Around the World in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in South Africa, where Cricket South Africa has announced the full-time appointment of Graham Smith as its Director of Cricket. He will initially serve a 2-year term until the end of March 2022. Smith has been operating in an interim capacity since December, but was always expected to be offered the role on a permanent basis. We head over to Italy, where Sebastian Vettel believes Formula One's enforced hiatus will give himself and Ferrari the chance to cover ground with his contract talks. Vettel, the 4-time champion who enjoyed a disappointing 2019 season with the Scuderia, sees his current deal expire at the end of this year. But while Ferrari have been linked with several other drivers to partner Charles Leclerc, including Lewis Hamilton, they look set to retain Vettel, who admits there is now plenty of time to negotiate, with the campaign delayed until at least the end of June due to the coronavirus crisis. We touched down in the US, where after the PGA Tour announced their intention to resume tournament golf behind closed doors in June, Paul McGinley explains how playing in front of no crowds is better than not playing at all. He said if golf does resume in June, the players will face a sterile golf-only environment with no spectators, and that's a situation I can see carrying on right up to and including the Ryder Cup, and after that as well, including the majors.
Hi, I'm Clemens Matau, chicken in midfielder. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
Tonight we're talking about the greatest comeback in Champions League history, and no doubt Liverpool has been involved in a few. Barry, he's got last year's Champions League semi-final with Barcelona, and Paz, he's got that famous 2005 Champions League final in Istanbul.
When it comes to epic Champions League comebacks, Liverpool has a knack of pulling them off with regularity, and the night of Tuesday, the 7th of May 2019, was to rank among the greatest nights in the history of the club, comparable even to that night in Istanbul. The stage was as big as they come, a Champions League semi-final, and it was to be tournament favourites Barcelona taking on the Reds of Liverpool, who themselves were engaged in an intriguing championship race with Manchester City in the English Premier League. A week earlier, Liverpool had lost the tournament favourites Barcelona 3-0 in a masterclass by the Catalans, but the Reds of Merseyside were not completely undone, as they gave as good as they got. But the scoreline was to set Barcelona well on their way to a place in the Champions League final. Goals from Suarez, Messi, and then that free kick from Messi would result in a tough second leg for the Reds. To exacerbate the scenario, the Reds were to be without their talisman, Mohamed Salah, and Roberto Firmino, 2/3 of the Reds' feated front three. The odds were firmly stacked against the Merseysiders. Remember, the man they call Bobby was already suffering from a groin strain, and Mo Salah had suffered an accidental head injury with Martin Dubravka of Newcastle, the Newcastle goalkeeper, and will be out with concussion. And at this stage, he was Liverpool's top scorer with 26 goals. 3-0 down to Barcelona with only 1/3 of the front three, Sadio Mane, available. Even the most optimistic Liverpool fans was hopeful but not expectant. Barcelona, on the other hand, had already wrapped up the La Liga Championship and had the luxury of resting almost all the starting 11 that would line up at Anfield fresh and ready to inflict more pain on Liverpool and take another step towards fulfilling Captain Lionel Messi's promise to the Blaugrana fans that they would deliver the Champions League trophy that season. They arrived at Anfield to a loud welcome from the fans outside the stadium. And though they carried a healthy goal margin, I'm sure staring at those scouts' faces baying for their Catalan blood would have made just a slight ounce of doubt cross their minds. Well, at least they would acknowledge that there was still work to be done. The Reds themselves would need a reason to believe, and almost as a chastisement to the entire Liverpool family, players and fans alike, or maybe just as a defiant show to demonstrate that the tie wasn't over, Mo Salah arrived at the stadium wearing not his Liverpool team wear like Firmino did. Instead, he wore a poignant ensemble from the House of Mo. Black jeans, a black zip-up hoodie with a black t-shirt with the words boldly emblazoned on the front, "Never give up." This was to be the message for the whole institution of the Reds, to maintain their belief in achieving the impossible, delivering the implausible. This, after all, was Anfield. Klopp was faced with a selection conundrum, and in answer to this, he shuffled his pack. The goalkeeper and back four were unchanged. That's Alisson, Robertson, Matip, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold. But in midfield, he showed bravery in management. Captain Henderson, Milner and Fabinho. Absolutely raw grit. Up front, enforced changes. Mane, available, picked himself. He opted to complete the front three with Shaqiri and Divock Origi. Xherdan Shaqiri, of course. Barcelona coach Luis Enrique selected what was one of the strongest lineups up front. Messi with the two returning former Liverpool players, Coutinho and Suarez. Remember, this is a team that had managed to rest over the weekend and not play in La Liga. This was going to be tough. Wow. A perfect start. With Anfield in full voice, more in defiance than actual belief, I would assume. And with the Liverpool team showing signs of being in an effective mood, the Reds got the start that they needed, an early goal. After 7 minutes, Jordan Henderson found himself on the end of a build-up and staring at the whites of Marc-Andre ter Stegen's eyes. Shot low and to the left, but the German shot stopper was equal to the task, but could only parry it into the path of Johnny on the spot, Divock Origi, who coolly tucked it home. 1-0 to the Reds. But was the comeback truly on? It made the aggregate scoreline respectable, yes, at 3-1, but the equation for Barca hadn't changed. Get a goal at Anfield and the tie was all but done. It nearly happened a minute before half-time as Barca was warming to the task and beginning to find its rhythm. Jordi Alba found himself one-on-one with Alisson, and mercifully for the Liverpool fans, the goalkeeper came out on top. 1-0 at the break. I remember Mike Madura calling me at halftime, and we had a chat about the pearls of wisdom Klopp would need to tell the team in the dressing room. After all, we're the experts. I distinctly remember Mike saying, "We need to get an early goal after the break and it'll be on." He was right, except it was even better. First, genius and brave coaching. Gini Wijnaldum was brought on for Andy Robertson. Milner pushed to left back. 9 minutes later, bang! Wijnaldum ghosting into the box with a sublime third-man run and latching onto a cross to finish a low first-time effort. 2-0 on the night, 3-2 on aggregate. 56th minute, literally 2 minutes later, a cross from Trent Alexander-Arnold. Oh, too long. Xherdan Shaqiri picks it up on the other side of the box, touches it back to Milner in support on the line. Back to Shaqiri, a peach of a cross. And who's there? Gini Wijnaldum with a strong header at the near post. 3-0 on the night, 3-3 on aggregate. Now, only now, the whole of Anfield, no, the whole of the Liverpool kingdom absolutely believed. Could Liverpool actually pull it off? Was this on? But Barca still only needed one away goal and the permutations would change dramatically. As the game wore on, extra time was a reality. But between sporadic Barca raids into the LFC box, nerves were jangling. Until a seemingly harmless Liverpool corner kick won in the 79th minute, the ball bouncing off the advertising boards and finding its way back into the Barca box. Origi saunters across and kicks it out. A smart ball boy had already given Trent Alexander-Arnold another ball and he was already at the corner flag. Shaqiri was actually headed to take the kick. As Trent was leaving the corner arc, he noticed that the Barca team had congregated at the edge of the 18 area, while Origi was left alone in the 6-yard box. In probably the most alert, clever piece of footballing genius, the Liverpool fullback went back to the ball and sent in a low cross directed at Origi, who would coolly swing his right boot and tuck it away for the 4th on the night, making it 4-2 on aggregate. Absolutely brilliant. Liverpool managed to hold on for the last 10 minutes and dramatically turn around a seemingly insurmountable scoreline against one of the best teams in the world and qualify for the final of the 2019-2020 Champions League. As we now know, Liverpool went on to become champions, beating Tottenham in an all-English final, but that night will never be forgotten. For the power of Anfield on a European night, for the astute management of Jurgen Klopp, for the Mo Salah never give up t-shirt, for the team standing in front of the Kop, arm in arm, singing You'll Never Walk Alone, the heroes on the field joining the heroes in the stands. It was a special and unforgettable night. A special Champions League comeback.
Z.
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Z. The 2005 UEFA Champions League final was the final match of the 2004-2005 UEFA Champions League, Europe's primary club football competition. And that year, the showpiece event was contested between Liverpool of England and AC Milan of Italy at the Arturnik Stadium in Istanbul in Turkey on the 25th of May 2005. I'll never ever forget the day. I can tell you exactly where it was. I was sitting with a very close friend of mine that loves Liverpool as much as I do, and the two of us sat watching this final. And Liverpool had won the competition 4 times. They were appearing in their 6th final and their first since 1985. That's, of course, when they lost to Juventus after the Heysel disaster. Milan, who had won the competition 6 times, were appearing in their 2nd final in 3 years and 10th overall. Now, each club needed to progress through the group stages and knockout rounds to reach the final, playing 12 matches in total for that Champions League final. And Liverpool finished 2nd in their group. I won't never forget, behind 2004 runners-up Monaco, and subsequently beat Bayer Leverkusen, Juventus and Chelsea to progress to the final. Milan won their group ahead of Barcelona and faced Manchester United, Inter Milan and PSV Eindhoven before reaching the final. So both these sides played decent opponents getting to the final of the Champions League. And Milan were definitely regarded as favourites on the night, especially having faced Manchester United and beaten them as well as Barcelona as well. As we said, regarded as the favourites. And I'll never forget the first minute of the game. AC Milan captain Paolo Maldini scored. Wow. 1-0 AC Milan, just with 1 minute on the clock. Then striker Hernan Crespo added 2 more before half-time to make it 3-0. Can you imagine a Champions League final? Liverpool 0, AC Milan 3. They were running rings around Liverpool. We were done and dusted, well beaten. We all had long faces, and we just wondered how we were going to get through the next 45 minutes. Could this be 6-0? Could it be 7? Could this be a record result? Well, the second half started, and what anybody that watched that game witnessed that night was probably one of the greatest comebacks you'll ever see in Champions League football. I mean, Liverpool in the second half, they just launched this comeback and scored 3 goals in like a 6-minute spell, and leveled the score at 3-3. Steven Gerrard, a cracking goal from him. Vladimir Smitsa, remember him, and one of my favorite ex-Liverpool players, Xabi Alonso, getting the 3rd goal to make it 3-3, and the scores remained the same during extra time, and of course we went to a penalty shootout, which was required to decide the champions. Who would ever have thought, after that first half performance from AC Milan 3, Liverpool 0 at half-time, who would ever have thought that we were going to a penalty shootout? So Liverpool and Milan had each won their last European Cups after winning penalty shootouts. Remember Liverpool against AS Roma when Bruce Grobbler had the shakes. So they certainly had, it was penalties, and you know what happens with penalties. Anyway, there we were sitting in the lounge and absolutely glued to the TV. Milan obviously won the toss, and they were up to take the first penalty. Serginho, I think it was, who had taken Milan's first penalty in 2003 and scored, shot over the crossbar after some mimics from Jerzy Dudek, who was in goal for Liverpool on the night, those Bruce Grobbler spaghetti legs, as they called it. So that was AC Milan missing their first. Then Dietmar Hamann comes up, takes Liverpool's first penalty, and incidentally, he had actually had a broken toe, and he scored. He put Liverpool 1 up. Then Andre Pirlo was next for Milan. His penalty was saved by Dudek, who dived low to his right. So that meant Liverpool could go 2 up if Djibril Cissé scored. Cissé scored, put Liverpool 2-0 up. Then Thomason scored Milan's next penalty to make the score 2-1 in Liverpool's favour. Then Jean-Arne Riese was next up for Liverpool, but his penalty was saved, and then we thought, oh boy, here comes the AC Milan fight back. Kaká then scored the subsequent penalty to level the scores at 2-2. Vladimir Smica took the next Liverpool penalty, and he scored to give them that 1-goal advantage. Then it was Shevchenko who had scored the decisive penalty against Juventus against Buffon in 2003. He had to score or Liverpool would win, and he hit his penalty straight down the middle of the goal. Dudek went down to his right but blocked the shot with his left hand, and the rest is history. Liverpool won the penalty shootout by a score of 3-2. It was probably one of the greatest nights that I have ever witnessed. The greatest comeback in Istanbul. The headlines all over the world with just an array of stories. For me, one of the greatest nights in Liverpool's history. I actually have an original photo of Stevie G lifting the cup, which was signed by him, proudly displayed in my office as the Champions League winners in 2005 on the night of the greatest comeback ever when Liverpool beat AC Milan.
Z.
That semi-final last year was spectacular at Anfield. Liverpool taking down the mighty Barcelona. Now, Jamie Carragher, Liverpool legend, declared it Anfield's greatest ever night. Barry described it perfectly, and Klopp said that he had told his team to attack with everything at their disposal and defend with whatever they had. And then that 2005 Istanbul final, Pause painted a very vivid picture. One Liverpool coach sums it up perfectly. Never before or since have I experienced such a night, one that started as total disaster but ended up in triumph. Bit of a breather now with our power play.
Hi, this is Mike Madoda. You can catch me and the team for all the latest breaking news out of the world of sport, local as well as international, on your favorite station. My station, your station, ZFM. We are Z Team on ZFM Sport.
Z.
You're tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. This is the lockdown edition of ZFM Sport. Let's keep the interaction going. The handle is at ZFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. We've got one more great comeback, and this time in waiting the way of Barcelona as the 2017 Champions League quarterfinal against PSG. Take it away, Chris.
It's the largest comeback in Champions League history, a comeback so miraculous and so unexpected it has a name, La Remontada, Barcelona's 6-1 win against Paris Saint-Germain. In the 2016-17 Champions League, PSG faced Barcelona for the third time in the knockout stage, having lost the previous 2 meetings on aggregate. History favored Barcelona, but you couldn't tell this when you took a look at the first leg, which was played at the Parc des Princes in Paris, and thanks to goals from Angel Di Maria Julian Draxler and Edison Cavani, PSG secured a 4-0 win. Barcelona only achieved one shot on target the entire match. There was a media frenzy afterwards, citing some that Barcelona seemed out of sorts with or without the ball. The second leg, though, was played at the Camp Nou in Barcelona, and the teams came into the match off the back of wins in their respective leagues. Despite the devastating loss in the first leg, the match was attended by over 96,000 fans. 3 minutes into the game, Luis Suarez scores a header, and in the 40th minute, Layvin Kurzawa attempted to block a shot from Andres Iniesta and instead scored an own goal. Now 2-0 at the break, a glimmer of hope is lighting up in every Barcelona's fan's heart, but realistically, they were still 4-0 down in aggregate. The second half brought with it an unexpected sequence of events. The first, a penalty converted by Lionel Messi after Neymar was fouled by Thomas Meunier in the 62nd minute. Edison Cavani scored a goal for PSG. This now meant that Barcelona needed 3 more goals to win because of the away goals rules. After 25 minutes with no goals, it looked like Barca were out. 87 minutes played, exiting the tournament became more and more a painful reality for them. 88 minutes in, Neymar curled a beautiful free kick to make it 5-4, then converted a penalty to make it 5-5. In another act of brilliance, Neymar set up Sergio Roberto to slam in a goal at 95 minutes. Barca had done the impossible. In the aftermath of the tie, PSG was heavily criticized, obviously, for being unable to hold on to their aggregate lead. Refereeing decisions were questioned, but still, unprecedented in the history of the competition, this night reminded all of us that football has never been, nor will it ever be, a predictable game.
Z. One of the main men in that spectacular fight back was Sergio Roberto. He was the man who got that final goal, as we heard from Chris, inciting elation from the fans. Now, his strike is still in contention for the best goal ever. That's like in football history, best goal ever scored. Could it be because of that? Who knows? Taking in some of your messages now. Remember, the handle is at ZiFM Sport. I want to hear what your greatest comeback has been in Champions League history. We've got Ivana on Twitter who just says Liverpool. Chete ends it there. Joel Gombera, it's fantastic to know that you are tuned in. Joel says Liverpool versus AC Milan takes the trophy for me. We've also got the Informal Sports Reports. He says that Barca PSG comeback was insane, but they didn't end up winning it, so I'd have to say Liverpool versus AC Milan in 2005. AC Milan was practically the Justice League in terms of talent, yet Liverpool managed to win after being 3-0 down. We've also got one more comment here from Kid Charewa, who says Liverpool versus Barcelona last season, for all intents and purposes, that tie was over, but somehow how they resurrected it from the ashes, we'll never know. It was unthinkable that a front line of Messi and Suarez would fail to nick a goal. Imagine that. Ah, fantastic. Let's now catch up with what's happening in the world of football in the beautiful game.
The big leagues, the big teams, the big players. The beautiful game on ZiFM Sport.
We kick off the beautiful game where UEFA is working towards plans that would see the Champions League final end the 2019-2020 season on the 29th of August. European football's governing body will meet on the 23rd of April for more discussions about how to complete a campaign which has been disrupted by coronavirus.
Z. All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back heels Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudent. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
There's no football being played at the moment in England, but it doesn't stop the speculation. In fact, one could actually say it is silly season already as people begin to speculate on the ins and outs at our favorite clubs ahead of the end of the season as well as next season. And just keeping an eye on the newspapers out in England, one of the lead stories, one of the stories that caught our eye is that Harry Kane and Jack Grealish would be welcome additions at Manchester United. That's according to Mark Bosnich, who feels his former club are moving in the right direction under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. If you remember, Mark Bosnich, of course, played for Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson. He is the Australian shot stopper. United were on an 11-match unbeaten run in all competitions when the COVID-19 crisis brought a halt to much of competitive football globally. As such, when the close season arrives, any Old Trafford overhaul might not be as drastic as first imagined. Nevertheless, of course, the former Australian goalkeeper Bosnich, he told Stats Perform a high-end addition and attack would be ideal, even though he acknowledges a high asking price and Tottenham's notorious hardball tactics in the transfer market could make acquiring Kane a very tough ask. So I take a look at those two signings. Would they add value to Manchester United? No doubt. Those are two of the leading English talents in the league at the moment. You take a look at Jack Grealish. Can we find better midfielders in the league? You have to say maybe one or two. But in terms of English-born midfielders, Jack Grealish is the best in the league at the moment. And of course, Harry Kane is the captain of England. So in terms of potential, in terms of profile, these are players certainly that would add value to Manchester United. But the ability of Manchester United to pull off these deals is going to be something, I think. Jack Grealish may be the realistic option. There's also been a rumor that they're taking a look at young James Maddison at Leicester City. Who's the better player, Grealish or Maddison? I certainly go with Jack Grealish. I think he'll add value to Manchester United, and he will allow the likes of Marcus Rashford to concentrate on playing further up the pitch, with him, of course, slotting into midfield next to the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Scott McTominay. Harry Kane, it'll take a world record fee, I think, to prize him away from Tottenham Hotspur. I can't see him leaving Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. I can't see Mourinho sanctioning such a move. Mourinho certainly wouldn't have come to Tottenham Hotspur if he didn't believe that he would keep Harry Kane for the foreseeable future. So I think this is another one of those stories where, of course, former players, pundits will be talking about ideal situations and not necessarily realistic expectations. So for me, out of those two, the more realistic prospect, Jack Grealish, he certainly would add creativity, and playing in a midfield that could potentially have Bruno Fernandes, Paul Pogba and Scott McTominay, that will be one of the better midfielders in England. Harry Kane, my goodness, they're going to have to throw a bucket load of money to Tottenham Hotspur.
Z. Horsepower unmatched. Torque to beat the best. Speed unrivaled. Sleek and easy on the eye. Let's get behind the wheel of football engineered to perfection. The Bundesliga, made in Germany.
All right, to Germany, a quick return to Bundesliga action after the coronavirus shutdown would make a mockery of the rest of society, German fan groups have said, as officials hope to restart the league next month. Borussia Mönchengladbach beat FC Cologne 2-1 last month in Bundesliga's first ever match played without fans, labelled ghost games in Germany. It was also the league's final match before the season was suspended. Now on Wednesday, Germany extended its ban on large public events until August the 31st, meaning that if football returns to stadiums, it will definitely be without fans for the remainder of the 2019-2020 season. For me, that's okay. I think that we should be well aware and alive to the fact that possibly when football returns after the coronavirus-induced lockdowns, we are likely to see football in closed stadiums, certainly for the remainder of the 2019-2020 season. However, when we jump into the 2020-21 season, we are starting that just on the back end of the Northern Hemisphere summer, and also positive signs coming out for treatment of the coronavirus, as well as tests and all sorts. So we may may begin to see fans in stadiums possibly by the end of the year, according to reports. So I don't think it's too much for us to just weather out the storm, finish this season with closed stadiums. But German fan groups aren't happy with that. Now, several German fan groups have warned against returning to football too quickly and say that holding games behind closed doors next month and testing players for virus would hurt the efforts of medical staff and other essential workers during the pandemic. So I think their argument is just that this will be a slight on all of those who are on the front line, who are fighting this virus, and we are just making a quick return to football. However, I think in context, Germany has been one of the countries that has managed the coronavirus pandemic most effectively. If you look at the cases reported versus the mortality or the deaths thereof. And so Germany as a whole should be complimented for that under the administration of Chancellor Angela Merkel. So with that in mind, I think that the fan groups also need to bear that in mind, and at some point, at some level, we're going to have to return to normalcy. Now, Minister President of Bavaria, Markus Söder, as you know, Germany is split into various provinces, and each province has its own minister president. And the one for Bavaria, Markus Söder, refused to rule out further staging Bundesliga matches without fans after he held talks with Chancellor Angela Merkel and other German politicians on Wednesday. So the decisions of that will be seen. However, the DFL is set to hold a virtual General Assembly on April the 23rd, and the German government will announce new decisions which could include those affecting the Bundesliga on April the 30th. And just seeing what the DFL will do, how they plan to finish the season, we will remain seized with that matter. And you can hear it here first on ZiFM Sport.
The league that makes football oh so beautiful, where artistry and strokes of genius are the order of any day, where the game is played with a smile and the little master creates his magic.
It's Lionel Messi!
All the news from the Spanish La Liga on ZiFM Sport.
The goal the world wants it!
The Royal Spanish Football Federation plan to award qualification to next season's Champions League and Europa League based on the current standings if La Liga cannot be completed. Atletico Madrid would be one of the biggest losers in that scenario, with Diego Simeone's side sitting sixth in the table when the coronavirus pandemic saw the league suspended indefinitely with 11 games to go. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Sevilla and Real Sociedad would qualify for the Champions League, while Atletico would join Getafe in the Europa League. Now, this shocking decision, if it is carried out, could result in a number of disgruntled clubs. So Getafe have won at Real Sociedad, but because they still have to play them at home, they sit out of the Champions League places on goals scored, with the goal difference being identical. The third and final Europa League spot, if the Copa del Rey final cannot be played, would be taken by the highest placed finalists not in the top six, and that would be Athletic Bilbao, with Real Sociedad fourth in the table. Two scenarios to consider, and this is some of the decision making that they're trying to wrap up and make a decision around. In the event that the league is able to restart but is then unable to be finished, the standings at the time of the suspension of the league would be used to decide European qualification. And if the season cannot be resumed and is cancelled, one of the major talking points among the European Club Association and UEFA is how to decide who would qualify for the European competitions next season. Something to consider though, earlier this month, UEFA postponed deadlines related to all 2020-2021 UEFA club competitions until further notice, in particular with regards to the admissions process. And this is important because that entire process affects the whole of Europe in terms of football, and also it's the gravity of the decision. Obviously, they can't make that decision quickly just because of how important this decision is to the club. So in terms of the importance of the decision, if you're not fully aware of these decisions, let's look at just from the financial perspective. Champions League starting fees, 15.25 million per team. Europa League per stage is 235,000 euros. That's a major difference for a club financially. Another pointed to consider performance-related fees, 2.7 million per win in the group stage, or 900,000 euros per draw, and that's in the Champions League. For the Europa League, major difference again, 570,000 for every win and 190,000 for a draw. Now, at this time where revenues have been severely affected by the pandemic, every single club is looking at revenue sources, and the difference between Champions League and Europa League could be a huge factor for teams. We know that the Royal Spanish Football Federation and UEFA don't take these decisions lightly, but some clubs may be angry and dissatisfied with whichever decisions are made.
Z. The Nerazzurri, the Black and Blues, Inter Milan.
It's Romelu Lukaku, and it was never in doubt. He's a beast at the best of times, but this season he has become a monster.
The Giallorossi, the Yellow and Reds, AS Roma.
Belotti has a go! Tremendous hits! That's what he's capable of.
La Viola, the Purple Ones, Fiorentina.
Brock Ribery seals a glorious win for Fiorentina with a sumptuous goal at San Siro.
The Bianconeri, the Black and Whites, Juventus.
Ronaldo seals yet another 3 points for Juventus.
Tough yet colorful. The best of Italian football on Z.
And in Italy, Italy's sports minister Vincenzo Spadafora is hoping to confirm a May 4 date for the return to Serie A training. Everyone is hoping that the resumption of training is as soon as possible. Serie A was suspended indefinitely in March after some matches were played behind closed doors due to the coronavirus pandemic, which has claimed more than 144,000 lives globally. The Italian Football Federation has already stated that the campaign will not resume until the health and safety of all concerned can be guaranteed. Yeah, this is a very tricky one and a very sensitive issue, when it comes to the coronavirus and sport. Everyone wants sport to come back as soon as possible, but the way the coronavirus has affected the whole world, it becomes very, very concerning that when we play sport, what are we going to do? How are we going to conduct each other? How are we going to be tackling and all that? So it's still going to be very, very difficult to cope with what has happened, even the training, how two teams train. We heard yesterday about the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich's training schedule. They were saying that they won't be doing any training sessions that involved contact or tackling and all that. They'll be doing drills, technical drills and all that. So probably Italian Serie A will want to go that way as well, because the government has already extended the restrictions on movement and outdoor activities until May 3. So probably the Italian Federation or the sports minister is hoping that for May, after the lockdown is done with or is suspended, then the clubs can resume training.
Z.
What a jam-packed show, but we gotta go. We've run out of time. We'll catch you on Monday. But have a good weekend, everybody, and happy Independence Day tomorrow. Take care of yourself and stay safe.